is a kind of morphogenetic grid of possibility of opening into true nature. And we acknowledge that just in these first few minutes, just by closing your eyes and on an inhale, allow the opening to arise. And on the exhale, just relaxing into the field, the presence, the one I am. The exhale is the opening into this verdant, effulgent, scintillating source of everything, and knowing ourselves as that. So another inhale. And again, a deeper relaxation and an opening into the eternality and the infinity of this field that is who I am. We are that. And what a profound experience to fall into, falling into the love, falling into the connection, the oneness. Here we are the same. The ego breathing body-mind, we're all distinct and different. But here we have the same qualities, the source qualities of awake awareness that arises and reveals itself as the world. It arises in accordance with who we take ourselves to be. And the way that that works is that who we take ourselves to be has a frequency, it has a vibrational tone, it has information into this field that is who we are, so that what arises there and in our apparent 3D reality is based on who we are being, who we take ourselves to be, and knowing ourselves as true nature. That's the highest frequency. And from that place, we will begin to redream this reality. So we're opening and allowing the allowing possibility of love and connection. The qualities here that we all share are freedom and love and peace, awake awareness. I am that. Tat Vam Asi, thou art that. Knowing yourself as that, you relax into the fullness that of all that's implied by knowing oneself as source. I am that. And so we are here together to experience this shared experience of oneness, of presence, of aliveness, of possibility, of potentiality. And so it is.
So Kim and Lauren and Mahalia have joined.
Wonderful. Yeah. I have to say, so happy. I wish I could see you. But the fun of this gathering is the energy of it and the acknowledgement of a shared possibility that we're at least willing to open into. Gabor Mate just published a book recently that is brought in what's been percolating, as we all know, because all of us are interested in this kind of thing, in the arena of the trauma as a primary experience related to addiction and neuroses of all kinds. The name of his book is The Myth of Normal. The piece that isn't addressed there is the way in which we can move out of that. That's the work that we do here, so that we begin to undo and reveal what's been in front has been an ego, fear-based identity, but what underlies that and everything else is our true nature, which is, we could call the quantum field. I suspect my sense of it is because I've studied A Course in Miracles and consciousness of all kinds and been on this path for a long time. The psychological self, or the me, fell away about 13 years ago. And the freedom expressed out of this body-mind unit is that it's freedom now. It's not any longer restrained or contrived by fear, by the idea of being a person who has to avoid something or get something to be okay. That's my definition of what it means to be awake. I believe everyone in this room is on the cusp of that, and everyone on Zoom also. Yeah. So my sense of what happens, because this is often a question, why the hell did we have to do this? Why did we incarnate here? And I suspect that it, in my simple kindergarten model, is it best explained by a matching frequency that kept us on what we often call a karmic wheel. And it's the frequency of fear, and we get pulled back into this projected reality that's caught in polarity and fear. And that's what matches the frequency of us incarnating. What our job is this time, and we really do want to do it before we shift into the next frequency. When we drop the body, we want to do it before we drop the body, is to wake up to our true nature. So that frequency begins first, what I call redreaming this reality. Shifting this reality out of where it's been caught in fear and suffering, and into what we could, as an analogy, call back to the garden, the return to our own heart on our own behalf, out of the feeling and the experience of being against ourselves. And because we're against ourselves with the early wounding, that creates the distortion field in which we project a reality that continues to prove that we are correct about not being good enough, that we are correct about not getting what we need, that we are correct about we are less than, or that we don't matter. So we've created a projected reality caught in a frequency of fear that not just supports our distortion field, but it actually is the very nature of it. The distortion is through this lens of whatever that early wounding conclusion is. It's varied in terms of experience, but it's at the heart of it, it's always the same. And that's a level of self-rejection where we simply are not available to honor, to know our true nature as awareness, where we're caught up in believing that we are a person who has to get something or avoid something to be okay. So that's kind of my kindergarten definition of an ego or a fear-based person is the one that believes there's something I can get out there, or there's something I need to avoid out there so that I'll be okay. Clearly, the cosmic joke is that out there is a projection of I'm not okay, right? So we have this kind of hall of mirrors, this insanity, and it often feels that way to us because it doesn't make sense, really. But at the heart of the matter is the self-denying conclusion that is a frequency of fear, and it's gotten repressed. And from that place, the projection of an external reality. And there are now, how many are there? 8 billion, nearly 8 billion projections going on of not being good enough. And we wonder why the world is so screwed up. It's obvious, and we can take our little version of that, wherever that was operative and whenever it was operative most powerfully in our own lives, creating suffering. We can take that version and multiply it kind of by 8 billion and understand that this is insane. This is insanity here. The frequency of polarity and fear together have created this dynamic, this reality where everybody is caught up, feeling like they're not good enough, and wondering how it is that they can be who they deeply sense they are, but there's something in the way of it. There's an obfuscation, there's a veil, there is a limitation. And that limitation is from the early identity conclusion. In Gabor Mate's book, he points out to the universality of the wounding, the experience that every incarnating, he wouldn't say that part, but that's how we talk about it. Every incarnating being looking like an infant is going to experience, if it didn't happen in the womb, it's going to happen soon after, experience a sense of alienation, a sense of separation, a feeling like this is really scary and I may not get what I need. And in that conclusion, over the first few years, they say from birth to 7, that conclusion is installed as an identity that, this is the tricky part. That identity is not just isolated, experiencing its own sadness and its own alienation. That identity is giving off a frequency that informs its reality and will look like the teacher didn't treat me fairly, or mommy and daddy weren't home when I got home and I was all alone, or a dozen other things, because that's how powerful we are as creators. Whatever we're believing carries a frequency, a tone. That tone goes into the quantum field, and the quantum field collapses from potentiality into your afternoon on Maui. Yeah. So we're looking at the way in which reality works, and the way that it doesn't work is the way we've been programmed to believe it does work, at a level of cause and effect. The cause and effect out there that we've been attending to and that we try to get hold of and we try to manipulate so that the effect will come out better than the cause implied, right? That is where our attention goes, into the out there, and it's not cause in the matter. And so we are diverted and caught up in a fool's errand. We're caught up in trying to, it's like, what do they say? Moving the furniture around on the deck of the Titanic. It's like we're caught up in efforting at something that is not cause in the matter, and is actually, by the time it's showing up, was seeded, was put into motion in the past. So everything we're dealing with here that has the label of problem was projected and seeded, as I said, in a past conclusion, experience, projection of self-denying identity. There's no way to fix this reality by working in what looks like the problems. It's so we have to come home to where cause is. And in that understanding, we have to come home to ourselves. Hi, Robert, come in. And Yoda. So in this coming home to ourselves, we come back to true north. And the piece of this that I really like to share is the high frequency of authenticity and why we've been apart from that for this incarnation, the one that we are identifying with and as in this lifetime. The reason we've been apart from that is because that earliest experience when the child was left, there was a consideration by, while the child was in the womb, the fetus, of abortion by the mother, or an experience early on where a child was left in the NQ or isolated somehow and believed that it was not good enough, concluded that it didn't matter, experienced that it was all alone, and this was a scary reality. So when that happened, we are already caught up in a frequency of separation. And we believe something about ourselves that carries that. It's kind of like a signal. It's a signal. But the reality of who we are depends on us starting to come home to ourselves, waking up into what is our true nature, which is awareness. So we are awareness, having a human experience in a body-mind unit, looking like a dissociative agent of sorts, all of us having our and creating realities where we are way behind the 8 ball in terms of what's possible to make a difference. We can't make a difference in a reality that was created by the frequency collectively and individually 5 days, 5 years, 5 lifetimes ago. We have to come home to what's already true, which is this is it, right here, right now. I am that. And in that experience, in that knowing, I'll go back a minute. The way that we get to that knowing of our true nature is to see through the early conclusion, which I call the childhood wound, which is often pointed to early childhood trauma, like in Mate's book. But to see that that was a creation, that was an unavoidable conclusion of a being that's been incarnated into a reality that's based in polarity and fear. So it's not like we could have made any other choice, or even the parents could have made any other choice in these early experiences. We were already way down the road in this reality, and we came in, and I believe that people like us came in to shift it, to become aware of what's potential, what is cause in the matter, and to make the difference in this reality through understanding that it's a frequency reality. And that's what quantum physics has afforded us with, is an understanding of how it actually works. That we participate in it it feels daunting to us, because we feel like we're a person. We feel like we're a bad person, or that we're incompetent, or that we're not kind, or whatever self-judgment. The self-judgment gets repressed right away, but the distortion field that it creates is going to show up with that information always. And when that information shows up, it triggers us. So that's what we use in the Sangha here on Maui, and then people that I work with, is that we use the 6 steps to freedom process, to finding that, using that trigger to find out what that early wounding conclusion was. When we see what that was, then we have the opportunity to allow it to be dispelled through forgiveness, not through therapy. We've all been in a lot of therapy. And what happened was that we've worked under the childhood wound until it's become an edifice at which we worship, right? It's like, oh no, I know what my problem is. years ago, there's a woman who's been my student for 11 years that I talk to every night. And at one night she said, she calls me Mama G. Mama G, I know what's wrong. I don't have any self-esteem. And I said, that is not a problem. You're nothing. And that was a kind of wake-up call. She keeps saying to me, you ruined my life. I believed I was nothing, and you confirmed it. Go to the source. Yeah. So that's the alive intersection in consciousness where we are right now. And the potentiality is, if you're triggered, if you're caught, if you're suffering, you're believing something about yourself that's not true. It's an amazing kind of litmus test. So close, so available to us, so close in. So I usually, as usual, I was all over the map, but at this point, anybody who has a topic or a question that we might all look at together, the field that's available here to see is really quite amazing. This collection, this gathering of conscious agents.
I just wanted to tell you that Patel joined and Patricia joined. Thank you. So if you have a question or you have a topic, either in the room here or in the Zoom room, please raise your hand. If you're on the Zoom room, I'll spotlight you, and we'll go forth.
Questions are really helpful because it helps to focus the information that might be coming through in whatever way. I can talk a lot, but
Robert's got a question.
Robert's got one.
I haven't heard you review the 6 steps in a while.
Okay. Well, let's do that because it brings them into everybody's awareness. I think everybody probably has a sheet that describes them. But the 6 steps to freedom were derived by a man named Dietrich Walsack, whose book about his life is called Choose Again. And they were derived from A Course in Miracles. So the fundamental goal of them, the good part of them is based in forgiveness, not in a therapeutic model, not in analyzing. So the first step is whenever you're triggered, and for me, this is maybe the most important one because this body-mind unit was able to avoid believing that she was triggered for decades. She was like, oh no, everything's fine. I don't have a problem. It's all good. So we want to value being triggered because that's the opening. That's the place where we actually have entree into what's going on. The second step, so the first step is I'm upset or I'm triggered. The second step is the reality check where it says, it's about me. Now, I feel like he did it. He shouldn't have done that to me. That was disrespectful. And that's what triggered me. But who's triggered? Who's triggered? So this brings us into awareness and acceptance of access because it's about me. Because if it's about you, I'm pretty much screwed. I don't have any access to helping you be different. But I have total access here. So the first step is I'm triggered or I'm upset. The second step is it's about me. The third step is to go inward and allow whatever the feeling that the trigger created, the reaction response, is to find out that feeling, feel it as much as you can. And when you have felt it enough so that it actually has a word that is accurately associated with it, like I feel left out or I feel hurt or whatever, that feeling, that's the third step, name that feeling. And the fourth step is through free association and allowing the consciousness to open up and find the earliest memory that arises when you felt the same way. So the feeling is kind of like, I sometimes think of it as like a fishing line. When I was growing up in LA, Lower Alabama, daddies would take us out on the dock with a cane fishing pole that would have a line with a hook and bait and then a bobber on it. And we'd be sitting there And I could sit there all day because I loved being out there with my dad, right? But what would happen is that the bobber would start to go down, and then you knew that that was that the fish was there, right? So the bobber is the feeling, right? And that's what gets your attention. And I'm upset, I'm triggered, it's about me. The feeling is I'm hurt. I can feel this hurt. The fourth step is through free association. When did you feel it earliest that you remember? And it might have been when I often use the analogy, I don't know why, it must have happened to me, but I don't remember it. When mommy didn't pick me up from kindergarten on time. Actually, my mother ran the kindergarten, so she was always there. It was after the Second World War, and it was a daycare center for all of the Rosie the Riveters that worked in the shipyards in Mobile, Alabama, right?
Oh.
So my mother was always there, but I found in the experience that some kind of innocent experience, unavoidable by the parents, certainly not being abusive, but the child feels the same hurt, the same feeling of alienation, the same feeling of fear that comes up, that mommy's not there on time. And there you are waiting. You just started to school 3 days ago. The teacher's standing there feeling clearly annoyed that mommy's not there on time. And there you are with that feeling of alienation or hurt or rejection or whatever it is. That's the fourth step. When was the earliest time I felt that way? The fifth step is when that happened, what did I believe it meant about me? So with the kindergarten example, not getting picked up on time, the child may have concluded, I'm not wanted, or I must be bad, or there's something wrong with me, right? But when something happens in the external, and this is kind of a placeholder, I want to remember to come back to this external occurrence, what we call the wounding. When that happened and that conclusion was reached, it was as if it were installed. And now the child, even at 4 or 5 or 6 years old, or sometimes earlier than that, is perceiving the world through the lens of I'm not good enough or I don't matter. And that's a fearful, fearful self-conclusion. Because it's so painful, it immediately gets repressed. And so now we've got the repression of the early wounding conclusion. I don't matter, I'm not good enough. The sixth step is to bring that conclusion into the light, to see that that was unavoidable. The circumstances were unavoidable. You can even, in some instances, we can even see that something really bad happened to the child. That conclusion came from something, that early memory may have been one of abuse or neglect of some kind. So something really did happen. But what you concluded that it meant about you is where we go to, because that's what is cause in the matter of the projected reality, your belief about yourself. And so we see that I concluded that I'm worthless, I don't matter, I'm a piece of shit. That deep conclusion that immediately got repressed about who am I, that this happened, this is so scary. That conclusion now is with us, we can see it, we have the light of awareness on it. And the sixth step is I forgive myself for ever having believed something that could never be true. I am the awake awareness in which all realities arise. So it's both the realization of we are not what we concluded, and that what we are is beyond any words to express. I am at the very heart of creation. I am the awareness. So that's the 6 steps, kind of in my language, and they're available. They always come with your Zoom connection, with your email. Yeah. Before I discovered the 6 steps, which was about 6 or 7, it was about 7 years ago, I knew that forgiveness had to be the alchemy that was needed to dissolve the installation of that conclusion about ourselves. And so I was very familiar and very appreciative and had done a workshop with Hugh Lin, who was the proponent and the purveyor of Ho'oponopono, which is the Hawaiian forgiveness model, which says, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. It's always like, it's that opening, it's a heart opening, it's that allowing that language to come into your awareness, just simply opens your heart. And that heart opening is for ourselves. It's back towards ourselves. I forgive me. I forgive me for ever having believed something that could never be true. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Pali, I just wanted to follow up on that because I had a horrible experience the other day of being triggered to such a degree that I started having heart palpitations for like an hour. And it was really scary. And I've gotten to forgiveness now. It was an altercation with what I thought was a really dear friend of mine. But it took me a while before I could get to even think about forgiveness. And just today, I'm almost there, thanks to you and the group. But sometimes you're triggered and you just can't get beyond it. I was almost on the way to the hospital. It was very bizarre. It's never happened to me before.
Right. And it absolutely can be physically felt because that's where it got installed.
Right.
It got installed in our mind and in our body. And that's why, another part of the trauma thing that's so prevalent right now in these arenas that all of us work in is that the body takes the hit. And that reaction, because whatever triggered you currently in real time had gone on way earlier, right? Way earlier. But I want to make sure that the one you're forgiving is you, not her.
Right. That's good distinction. Yeah.
Because we're source, we're cause in the matter. That's both powerful and daunting. Yeah.
Does that mean I shouldn't try to forgive her?
Yeah, you go ahead. It won't hurt. It won't hurt.
I'll give it a go.
Yeah. Yeah, when you forgive yourself, everything, the forgiveness of self, and this is Byron Katie's definition, I'll get it wrong probably, but it's something like when you really get that what you believed happened never happened. And the 6 steps, I would say that what you concluded about you could never be true. Something really happened. Yeah. Nobody escapes incarnation into this field of fear and polarity. You will not escape this dynamic. But we are here to acknowledge this dynamic, to see through it, and then to shift realities. We shift realities through our frequency. The frequency of believing I'm not good enough creates a reality that is caught in polarity. And this is kind of tricky sometimes because often we'll get the good end of the stick, right? The teacher really does like me. I really am making A's. Mommy made my favorite cookies, right? Maybe we're at the good end of the stick, but that underlying, because the stick is the polarity, the good end of the stick implies the other end of the stick. Me having what I want implies I can lose it, right? So we're caught on that. Is that the horns of the dilemma? I don't know. Yeah.
I have a question.
Is that Marty?
I don't know how to start this. If
Okay.
there's,
Yeah.
if there is someone, and I've gone through the steps, and I'm like, there is nothing about this person that I don't like. I mean, they are nice, they're pleasant, they're everything. I just don't like being around them. It's it's a problem.
Like really, really don't, like there is a underlying issue.
No, I don't. And I would prefer, so I just don't, I mean, I just don't want to, do I have to go into what's going on and what, or is it just okay Because I look, there's nothing that this young lady ever did. She's pleasant, she's kind, she's nice, she's everything wonderful. I just don't like being around her.
What is it? Let's just do a quick six. What's the feeling? What does it feel like? I can hear what it is really, but I don't, if you have more specificity about what you're feeling, you feel resistance to her. But what is the feeling? Is there an early memory of feeling that way? Maybe
And
with
I
an,
tried to, when we just did the steps, I was like doing that in my head. It was like, no, I don't know if it means.
You said
Unless
you felt like she was kind of a user. Or whatever the word that you used. What was the word that you used?
It's one of their friends. Okay, that's where it's.
the contribution.
Word, like somebody takes advantage of it. We had the conversation. And I told her that she had to look at herself. And she didn't. She did not.
No,
I knew.
no, I'm the only one that can say that and get by with it. And I don't always get by with it. Yeah, the feeling that you're having is about you.
Yes,
Yeah, and the feeling is, does a memory come up with it, Marty, at all? Does a memory?
you know, I tried it even when we did the steps, just now, I was like, okay, go into this, what is this? And I don't know if I'm just in that much resistance, but I figure sometimes maybe it's okay just to not want to be around people. I really don't. But I'm not unpleasant when she's around.
Mm.
I'm pleasant, I'm nice. I just would prefer I just would prefer being somewhere else. And I don't know, and maybe I'll come private and talk to you about that.
Well,
She'll be there on Friday.
yeah, the feeling part is the way in to see what it was, because it's not that you don't have preferences. We all do. We have preferences, but when it's visceral like that, when it's kind of a bodily sense thing, which it sounds like it is for you,
Yeah.
a resistance, then there's something else to be
And I
gained.
don't feel fear. I don't feel. I mean, she's not threatening. She's nothing. She's.
Mhm.
I don't understand, and it's driving them crazy, and it's making me. It's making you crazy. Oh no, it's making you guys upset too. But anyway, is it okay sometimes just to not choose to be around someone? I mean.
Well, it would be interesting to find out if
Why?
it sounds to me like she's not someone you're around very much,
No.
since she's the girl's friend. But the interesting thing is to find if that shows up somewhere else, not just with this person, but with other people
I've
in
asked
your way.
myself that question too.
You're so
I've
good.
asked myself that. Okay, and I've asked the girls, have I done this before? And have I done? And I haven't. I really pretty much. I'm pretty much be around people. I don't understand what it is. And I just tell myself, I guess it's okay to sometimes just choose to do something else.
Well, I can promise you that if you're putting sugar over shit, which is the way I describe spiritual bypass,
Yeah.
if you're doing that, it'll show up somewhere else.
Well, then,
Yeah, it will. You don't need to worry about it.
okay.
And in the meantime, be kind to yourself regarding it, which is what you're describing.
Whatever.
Not having to be around her.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
just works best for me.
Yeah, sounds good.
Could be past lives.
Pardon me?
Could be past lives.
I have a question.
I never even thought about that.
That is,
Yeah, I was looking into Hugh Lin this weekend, and one of the things he was saying in the course of this interview was that the part of the cleaning he does with the forgiveness had a child aspect.
mm,
And it made me think of, I hadn't, he was just getting drawn out into elaborating it. And there was a kind of unconscious / child. He had kind of schematized the cleaning. And there was an element of child that comes forward. And I thought that was just really interesting when the connection of that to the 6 steps, because for me, the hardest thing is to evoke what seems like a legitimate memory
Mhm.
based on a feeling. It feels either like the same memory or a contrived memory. And so I was feeling more results, in a way, more relief from just doing the Hugh Len
Mhm.
than I was with the 6 steps. It was less elaborated feeling.
Right.
But I also felt like, or at least tonight when I was listening to you talk about it, I was more aware of the instantaneity of a repression and how slippery it is.
Yeah.
And this is also coming up in a really indirect way in the reading I was doing about quantum field, because our experience of our perspective as a frog perspective in a limited quantum way is not the is all about repression.
Did you say frog?
Frog, yeah, he metaphorizes, the entangled perspective in quantum is the bird's perspective, where you see everything and you see the connectivity of everything, and it's an entire whole thing. The frog's perspective is what we have right now with the gallery. We're each looking at our little frog perspective at the worm or the fly.
All right.
And that implies a massive repression.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
we're editing everything out in order to have a singular, a kind of specific frog perspective. The
Yeah.
bird perspective is not editing anything.
Right.
Right. I mean, metaphorically
Right.
speaking.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, the frog perspective is the contraction out of the fear-based wound, basically.
And the frog perspective is also simply individuation.
That's true. That's true.
You know,
true. The
just
individuation.
different.
Yeah, it's different, and it tends to derive from the woundedness, but that's not the whole of it, because
Right.
we do have the human design, we have the astrology, we have the specificity of a way of expressing and so forth, and that makes for a different view. But most fundamentally, it's the wound that creates a view that limits us.
Well, I mean, you want to believe that there's individuation without pain, without suffering, without origin in, right?
Yeah.
There's just frogs.
Yeah, that and it is true that there is that, but it's very different, because once the self judgment that is at the heart of the woundedness falls away, you simply are not projecting through a distorted lens anymore, and it's just what's happening, and it's just there's no more of the what I want to say, the limitation of the judgment. It's that's one of my favorite quotes, that all judgment is self-judgment. Right? And when that self-judgment falls away, that is at the level of what I think all of us are about, certainly what I've been about, of what we might call awakening, but it's just the shift in perception. Because if there's no lens of self-judgment, everything is just looking like what it is. It's just what's happening. And it's free. It's free. It's not.
Well, you were sitting on the dock with your dad and watching the bobber. There's nothing problematic there. There's no suffering.
That's right.
It's just a couple of frog perspectives looking at the bobber, right?
That's right. Me and the frogs. That's
Right.
it. You and the snakes.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks, honey. Thank you. Yeah.
I wanted to say something.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry, sweetheart. Yeah, Marty, and 40 years as a therapist, so there's it. I just wanted to say it might give you a better traction if you were to say, I don't like her. I mean, I heard you say everything but that.
But I don't not like her.
But I think you should play around with, I just don't like her. And see how it feels. And is it okay?
Not true.
Is it okay to not like somebody? And what does it say about you? That's all. Just play with it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Anne.
because, yeah, to be
Yeah.
a good girl, you don't.
That's
You
right.
got- you got-
Yes.
Yeah. Look at her son, like her.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I have a question. It's Janine.
Hi, sweetheart.
Hi. Um, my question is about what you refer to as the frequency of fear, and that this is a fear-based reality. And I would like you to explain that a little bit more. My understanding from what you say is that because we are separated from ourselves in some way and need to develop adaptive behavior because of this wound and our conclusion that creates fear, because I either want something or want to avoid something. So when you talk about the frequency of fear, is that exactly what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's certainly a valence of it. That would be a slice of it. It's like, but the fear of separation, the archetypal, the ontological fear is that we're no longer connected to source. And that's our true home. And now we're caught, and we're separate and looking like we're limited to a body-mind unit. And then looking as if there is an out there that we can't be sure of. And so the moment that we have any kind of trauma experience, which might just be a pregnant mother that smokes a cigarette, right, that contorts the child, the fetus. So that then we are, but we're on an incarnational wheel that as the incarnations occur, bring us back into one more experience of separation from what we would call God, from all that is, the one I am, from ourselves, from our true nature, and caught up in the vicissitudes of this incredibly uncertain reality, where you can't count on anybody to be consistently loving or caretaking or whatever. So I believe that this frequency of this incarnation, this incarnational field that we call this planet or this world, is basically, it has the fear built into it. So the minute that you incarnate, it's already in operation prior to incarnating, actually, probably. It just is a metaphysical consideration. Yeah.
So it's the frequency of this reality that we're born into. And then all that happens in terms of conclusions and adaptive behavior and not being authentic and needing to get or avoid something exacerbates the fear of the frequency reality we're born into.
Right. So when we are motivated to try to get or avoid, that motivation is basically fear-based. But we've put sugar over shit for more than one lifetime. So we have the illusion that I can operate in the out there, or this or whatever, and and get what I want, and to be successful, and maybe things will be okay, and I might even someday be happy for a minute.
Right. But you're saying we're born into that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So that comes along with the incarnation.
Yes.
So, and if, well, of course, something is going to happen and we will feel separated. And as Gabor Mate calls it, little t trauma happens to all of us. Even with just little t trauma, just the regular vicissitudes of being born and having parents, we're still in a frequency of fear.
Yes. Right. That was, you know, in the metaphoric ontological story, that was the being kicked out of the garden. That was we left our connection with all that is, the oneness, and you know, fell into a rational, analytic, polarized, fear-based reality. So that's the overarching story. Yeah. But
Right.
but you don't I mean, maybe there are some avatars that incarnate and they're totally awake and not had by the collective conditioning or an individual experience of separation or negligence or fear. And that may very well be true. I wouldn't know.
Uh-huh.
But for
Uh-huh.
all, for the multitude of the apparent us's, the me's, it's a done deal. Yeah.
All right. All right. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we have about 4 more minutes before we go into meditation. Before we take another question, I want to just announce that we will not be having satsang next week. So just want you all to know that there'll be an email that goes out saying that, but just so you do know, we are going to skip next week. So if there's another question, either in the Zoom room, or hang on, I can't see anybody in the house here. We've got a few minutes to look at that. One thing I will say, Polly, you talked to us about earlier this week, that any one of those 6 steps can be the opening.
Right. Yeah. Because of the holographic nature of what we're taking a look at, and I believe the holographic nature of the 6 steps, in any one of those can open the entire arena of the woundedness and include the forgiveness as a kind of gestalt, as a kind of pattern. And absolutely, there can be any moment when one is sitting and allowing that memory to show up, and that awareness that if you can see it, you're not it. That's a fundamental awakening awareness. In my experience and in the experience of working with many people, it's like, if you can see it, you're not it. If you can see, I concluded I'm not good enough. And you know yourself as the awareness that can see that, that can dissolve, be dispelled in that moment of seeing it as a conclusion. Because what's true cannot be threatened. That's from the preface of Course in Miracles. What is real cannot be threatened. What is unreal does not exist. Therein lies the peace of God. And what is unreal is everything that can come and go. A label, an identity, a fear, all of that is unreal. And we know it because we are the seers of it. That is the acknowledgement and the experience of knowing something instead of being had by it or having it as our banner, identifying with it.
Thank you, Polly.
Thanks, Edie.
Thank you so much, everybody. Please donate to Polly what feels right in your heart, what you're able to. And we will meet again in 2 weeks. For now, we're going to pause. Anybody who wants to leave can leave. We're going into a 45-minute silent
Good night, sweetie.
meditation.
Good night, sweetie.
Thank you.
And you can stay for the meditation as long as you like, or leave at any point. Thank you so much.
We'll take a few minutes so that those of you who are not staying for the meditation can. There the girls. Oh, there we go. Great. Love you. Yeah, I'll speak to you about Saturday.
See.
Good.